Hello friends, and a warm welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I am Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. These episodes are love notes from me, sharing the things that I sometimes need to hear myself as well. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to my allotment plot and balcony garden, finding joy in the little things, and embracing our wonderful small home. In these episodes, I delve into what it means to walk a different path, stepping outside societal norms and embracing all the beauty it provides. Together, we'll learn how to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic of living in the present moment. I welcome you to come on this journey with me and maybe open your mind to a different way of living. I hope you find what you're looking for in the words of these episodes, and I hope they speak to you in your own unique way. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy and I am your host for this whole podcast, today's podcast episode, all of the things. And today we're diving into a really exciting subject. Now, we have just landed in official spring, so whether you maybe mark spring meteorologically at the 1st of March or with the turn of spring equinox, and the move of the wheel of the year, that is just passed on the 20th of March. So today I want to dive into spring cleaning, but I want to talk about spring cleaning for your soul. So we're not just going to be talking about decluttering those physical items, while that is absolutely always fantastic. I am a big fan of like an ongoing declutter, but I do know that we feel that pull to declutter and just clean and reduce everything around spring, and that's a lot to do with coming back to life after the winter, and a lot of feeling those feelings of rest and renewal that have almost passed through winter, and moving on to that rebirth and getting ready to start again. And now I've spoken in previous episodes about how you don't need to flick from like winter mode to spring mode in sort of like one fell swoop. You can actually ease into it, and it's also about that idea, when you commit to living slowly, it's that idea that you are not always going to have a life that feels slow and simple. And it's not about that. It's about finding the elements of slowness in simplicity, just finding ways to incorporate them into your life. So it isn't about this kind of ideal aesthetic, that we see on Instagram. Everything sort of very slow and whimsical and just very relaxing. Life typically isn't like that for most of us, and it's about being more intentional and about finding space within your busy life to slow down or just incorporate elements of slowness into it. And I think for most people, we feel very sort of overwhelmed, and we are constantly chasing this idea of a slower pace, but it feels so impossible in what is largely a very busy life. And it's just about thinking how we can switch our approach. And it's like I say, it's not about living this simple, slow, idealistic lifestyle, because for most of us it's just not possible. I know it's not for me, and I'm guessing it's probably not for you either. But it's about finding those little pockets of slowness. It's about being more intentional. It's about focusing on the things that matter, and pushing the things that don't to the side. And obviously, as I always say in everything that I do in these episodes, in my writing, we all have non-negotiables. And as much as I would I'm sure many people will be like, oh, well, I'd love to sack off this, that, and the other. Some things are non-negotiable, and we just have to roll with it. Whether it be our job or the school run or all sorts of things like that. We don't have the ability to just necessarily get rid of those things, not without mega lifestyle changes. But it's just about finding where you can weave it into your life, and also not being so hard on ourselves when we feel like we've got this idea of how we want to live. We want to simplify our lives. We want to be more intentional and bring elements of slowness into it, but what we feel is just that we're sort of running on this sort of hamster wheel, and it's very difficult to stop. And so it's about not being hard on ourselves when we're in those moments, and just maybe reframing how we are sort of approaching things in our life, because the default for so many of us, I think, is to just be on that hamster wheel. That's what we've been sold. That's sort of the life we has almost been designed for us, let's say. That's how modern society functions. It functions in a way that we are encouraged to be busy, that we're busy as a badge of honor, that we constantly tie our worth to our productivity and to-do lists and what we can achieve, and it's all a very achievement driven culture. And I think we've kind of lost our way in what really matters, because what we achieve doesn't matter. What we do for a job doesn't overly matter. We find that we're introduced or we're judged immediately on our job title. So if somebody said to you, oh, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mum, they'll be like, oh, or most commonly like, oh, I could never do that. I get that a lot with home education, like I could never be with my kids that amount of time. But, if I say, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mum, people are like, oh, good for you. But if I said, oh, I'm a vet, or oh, I'm a solicitor, people say, oh, amazing. Like what makes the difference? All valuable, of course. All valuable. The mother staying home raising her children, very valuable. Solicitors, valuable, very valuable. Vets, very valuable. Like, we all have a place in society. We all have it and if we're specifically talking about like a work culture, we all have our space in the machine. So a CEO maybe has their place there. They are a certain cog in the wheel that keeps things turning. But also, some of the jobs that we would consider not as high as a CEO, let's say a receptionist, for example, a really integral cog in the wheel. Like, if you answering the telephone for the whole company, as an example, if you're not there, who does that job? Who does those jobs that sometimes maybe go a little unnoticed? And I say that from experience. Like, I have done those roles, and it's really interesting how we sort of judge that within our society, and how we very, very much are sort of rooted in this idea of what we do is what our worth is, and what our worth is tied to. And I just wish it wasn't like that, to be honest. And I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent for this whole episode, but I just wanted to sort of like set the scene of, first and foremost, we need to disconnect a little, I think, from tying our worth to our productivity, because that is not helpful. And it is, I would say, one of the biggest things you can do to sort of declutter your life beyond the physical, like this episode is about. And when we talk about spring cleaning, we so often talk about like the physical spring cleaning in terms of like decluttering your wardrobe, or clearing up, maybe cleaning the carpets, washing the windows, the curtains, like those physical things. But throughout this episode, I want to invite you to go deeper than that when you think about spring cleaning, and think about how we can sort of clear out all of that emotional and mental clutter that really weighs us down, and how we can embrace slowness within that, how that can help us simplify. We can have a better look at our life when we declutter the mental and emotional clutter that is weighing us down. We can have a better idea of have a bit of a lay of the land. What's working for me, what's not working for me, where can I declutter, what isn't really that important to me. And once you figure those things out, where do I have space in my life where I can incorporate this simplicity and this slowness and this intention a lot more? And where can I create space for these things, for slowness, for rest, for ease, and ultimately for aligning your life with the seasons. And I always think, and I've said this before, that seasonal living gets sort of like swept up in the idea of slow and simple living, but I think it is the most fundamental part of it. Because when you choose to notice what living in alignment with the seasons really is, and I talk about this a lot, like particularly how we ebb and flow with the seasons, not chastising ourselves in the winter when we're tired and we just want to rest, because rest is important, it is essential, it's not something we earn. But when we almost acknowledge that I am going to feel more tired in the winter, I am going to be more lethargic, it is going to be more difficult for me to maybe start a new project in the winter. When we start to notice those things, and then we notice how our energy increases in the spring to reaching its peak in the summer, and then we're on the other side of it as we go into autumn and are getting ready for that winter slowdown. When we live in that sort of alignment, it actually makes it a lot easier to embrace the slowness, intentionality and simplicity, because when you are naturally aligning yourself with the seasons, you are then better able to sort of acknowledge this, acknowledge how it works, acknowledge how you feel, and then you will naturally find that space for slowness. So, I think living in alignment with the seasons is the first thing to really do when it comes to wanting to live slowly. Think about the seasons, think about how they work in your life, but not just the physical seasons of spring, summer, autumn and winter, but particularly if you're a woman, how we live cyclically with our menstrual cycles. It is all connected, which is why it is fascinating, but it's also a really perfect starting point if you are ready to maybe think about a little bit of a life change in how you can incorporate this slowness, this simplicity, and how this all fits in to living in alignment with the current season, because it will look different for every season. So, today we're talking about spring cleaning. So I want you to think for a second, like, what comes to mind to you when somebody says about spring cleaning? Because you might be thinking, like I used to, throwing open the windows and airing out the house from winter, maybe have a declutter of the cupboards, sort out the junk drawer, whatever it is. But what about all the other elements of our lives, the things that are not related to, getting out the mop and bucket, or decluttering? What about the spring cleaning for our soul? And I have felt this, multiple times through my life. It's not like a one-time thing, but, it might be that it's something that you kind of revisit, I guess, on a regular basis. And I know it's something that I have revisited on many, many times. I feel like, because of the way that the modern world is structured, and, everything we've just spoken about, how that works is, if you're not really, really intentional about how you are applying these things, it very quickly goes back to the default, the rush, the hurry, the burnout, the not making time for slowness, not living a life of simplicity, moving back to that default way of living. And that's because it's so inbred into every single one of us. That's how society and the world wants us to live. And I think there are many reasons for that. Maybe that's an episode for another time. I think busy people are distracted people, and I think distracted people are not always, looking left and right. And I just think when we can just take those moments and be more intentional and detach ourselves away from that default, then I think we feel better in general. I think we are sort of more aware of what's going on around us, more aware of how we want our life to really look, rather than just running on autopilot. And like I said, I have come to needing like an emotional or mental declutter many, many times. It is something that also needs to be addressed and come back to frequently. And if you should definitely never feel like you have failed if you sort of move back to that default way. It's just a bit, like how in meditation I will always say that, lots of people say to me, oh, I'm too, my mind's rumbling too much. I can't concentrate, I can't focus, I can't do that sort of like disconnect. And I always say that that's part of meditation. We can't always get there. We can't, for many of us, are not in that sort of level of getting there or being disconnected. But it's about noticing that moment where, oh, my mind is wandering, noticing that, and bring it back to where you are, bring it back to the present, bring it back to the breathing. And the same thing occurs in, integrating slowness and simplicity, or living seasonally as well in our lives. Because what happens is, we can very easily slip back to the default way of living, and it's just about bringing yourself back, reminding yourself, noticing, I am in a funky flow again, I am prioritizing, being busy, I have that sort of idea that productivity is related to my worth again, and I feel very disconnected from the place I'd got to. And it's just about bringing yourself back. And actually, one of the things I wanted to share in this episode is, right now, you might have seen, if you follow me on Instagram or Substack or are on my mailing list at all, I have released for the first time my first launch of my course Rooted in Seasons. Now, I've spoken about it many times on the podcast because I had like a trial group, went through it, and then I expanded the course. I got feedback for it, and I've grown it into this really great, huge transformational course which will help you. Basically, if you feel busy and overwhelmed, it will take you from busy and overwhelmed and help you just with this like 4-step framework and roadmap, really help you create a slow, simple, seasonal life that works for you. And it will look different for everybody, but it will basically help you figure out those routines and rhythms, figure out what you want from your life, figure out why slowness, how it looks in your life, what you want it to look like, what it can be, all about simplicity, how to live more in alignment with the seasons, and figure out and work on how you can have this as a sustainable way of living, meaning that we are really focused on how to make this a sustainable part of your life permanently. And that's one of the things that the course will take you through. It will take you through this whole transformation of identifying your busyness and your burnout, and how to move from that, how to integrate slowness, how to integrate simplicity, how to do all of these things in alignment with the seasons, and beyond that, why it's important and why it will create a life that feels so much better. And aside from that as well, obviously, that sustainable aspect, how you can do this in the long term and stop yourself sort of navigating back to the default, which can still happen. Like I say, it can still happen. But Rooted in Seasons is now live. It's in its very first launch. By the time this episode airs, the initial offer will have passed, which was 60% off the cost of the course. However, just a little something for you guys. Okay. If you are listening to this and you still want to take advantage of the 60% offer, you can still get it. All you need to do is email me at hello@theslowlivingcollective.com. That's hello@theslowlivingcollective.com. Let me know that you listened to this episode. Let me know that you heard the special offer of still being able to claim the 60% off launch price, because the price has actually gone up. It's still a good price right now. It is still 25% off for the remainder of this launch. But if you're listening particularly to this episode and you missed out the 60% launch period, drop me an email, hello@theslowlivingcollective.com, and I will hook you up with the course for 60% off. Okay. The course itself is actually only going to be open until the 2nd of April. And the reason for that is I will be doing 2 launches per year of this course. And that will be around spring equinox, which is when it opened, and it will be around autumn equinox. So this is the time to jump in, because I'm not going to open this course now for another 6 months. And the price will never be as low as the 60% offer. That is a one-time offer that I'm going to do. And the usual retail price of the course will be £97, but I'm doing it as a bonus launch. I'm so excited to get this out into the world. I've been working on it for over 18 months, and yeah, so that's what I'm doing this time, but that will definitely not come up again. So don't forget, if you want to grab the course and want to grab 60% off, drop me the email at hello@theslowlivingcollective.com, and I will hook you up with that 60% discount. So let's do it. Honestly, I'm so proud of this course. I am so excited. I've had so many people sign up throughout the 60% off weekend, and I am so grateful. I had a wonderful, beautiful group of founding members who really helped me. They took the course, and then I used their feedback to shape how the course went, and that's when I grew it absolutely exponentially. So I'm so proud of it. I would love you to join us. Actually, from the 8th of April, I am going to be doing a guided version of the course for anyone signed up who wants to join in. The course itself is actually self-directed, and there's no obligation for you to sign up and follow along. But if you did want to, I'm going to do a week by week. It's just going to be one email a week, a guided version to help you get through it. I know I'm no different to the rest of you. I also sign up to courses with the best intentions and don't finish them off. So if that's you and you really are passionate about getting through the course and getting to the other side and basically just, implementing the strategies within that to help you live a life that is more slow, simple, and more in alignment with the seasons, then firstly, grab the 60% off while it's still here. Secondly, if you want to, and like I said, there's no obligation to, you can follow along with the guided version of the course as well, and we'll go through it week by week and just have like a little bit of extra guidance if you want. But of course, you're welcome to do it self-guided, and also you are welcome to jump into the guided version at any time if you wish. Although I am going to be starting it on the 8th of April, I am going to make it so you can actually just jump in at any point and you will start from the beginning. So yeah, if you want to join, drop me that email, because the price currently is just the 25% off, so that's £72 for the course at the moment. But like I said, people who are listening to this episode and still want to join in, I am prepared to honour that 60% discount until the cart closes on April 2nd, so don't miss it. So back to the episode. I used to really focus so much on cleaning my physical space each spring, but obviously, like we've been talking about in today's episode, a lot of it is about letting go of mental clutter as well. And spring being that season of renewal makes it the perfect time to release that emotional baggage. So here are just a few signs that you might have a bit of mental clutter. So you might feel constantly overwhelmed or scattered. You know, you're saying yes to things that drain you because you feel guilty or obligated. And, you know, maybe your perfectionism is keeping you stuck in a cycle of feeling that you are not good enough. So how do we work through that and clear it? So we when we're like this, we're in a place of overwhelm, and we need to just move over and kind of simplify how we're doing things, simplify our life. So it can be really small changes. We get very overwhelmed by technology and the digital world. I definitely do. I have very, very strict boundaries over it. It's funny because when I talk about running my business, or I talk to other people who are, you know, in the early stages of running their business, what comes up actually quite frequently is that people are like, you know, I don't want to be doing all of the things you do. And it makes me laugh so much because I'm like, what do you think I'm doing? Like, of course I have to take time to make these podcast episodes and write the show notes attached, but I love doing that. That's sort of like the creativity part of what I do. Or, you know, for example, creating the course or the workshops that I do, or creating a freebie, like that's my jam. I mean, I've been a writer for over 20 years. The creativity in the writing, and that is just, it is the core part of what I do. Now, of course, there are things around that, like, you know, I might make an Instagram reel or an Instagram post, but it's very much just taking 2 seconds to turn on a camera, and then taking maybe a minute to do a voiceover. It's not a lot. So, you know, it's just, you know, I wouldn't say I have a perfect relationship with my phone and screens, and, you know, sometimes I like to check more than I should, especially, you know, when I'm in a launch phase like I have been around the course and getting that ready, and, you know, getting all of my copy sorted. But for the most part, there's actually not much I'm doing, because I will post and then I'll, you know, put my phone down and get on with my life. So, like I say, it's not perfect, but, you know, the way you can sort of make small changes around like the digital world is reduce your screen time, limit notifications. I mean, I haven't had notifications on my phone in years. I could not bear notifications. The only thing I have notifications for is I have a few people not muted on WhatsApp. It's my husband, my mum, my dad. I think that's probably it. And it's not personal. If like you're listening to me and you're like, oh my God, she probably has me muted. It's not personal. It's just that, you know, I don't want my phone pinging at me all the time. And like, you know, if it's urgent, you can call. And it's probably not urgent, which is good. So I take all my notifications off my phone. It can ring. and a few people can send me messages. Everybody else, I will get to you when I open the app. And that's the way it is. I don't have any of my apps like Instagram or my emails, like none of that's coming through. Like I have to physically go and check that. So and that's been years. I would say that's probably been 6 or more years. I'm thinking, like I think I had it long before I even had my daughter, and she just turned 6. So long time. A lot of it is about, decluttering digital spaces like emails, remove yourself from email lists that are not serving you. And, I use an email list and I send emails out, and I've just been in the launch of Rooted in Seasons, and it's been excessive in my eyes. Nothing that other creators that I follow, when they do a launch, they do exactly the same. You have to have this sort of like really intense period, because you want to find the people who want to work with you or take advantage of the offer. Like I want people to take advantage of that 60%. Like don't miss out on it, essentially. But then it's super busy, and then I made the decision, like you might be listening to this and being like, oh, I didn't see this come through in my email inbox like I usually do. And that's because I decided this week that I wasn't going to do that, because being in an intense launch period, I didn't want to be, once that intense 60% sale was over on Sunday, I didn't then want to be like Monday morning, like, hi, it's me again, now I've got something else for you. And so I made the decision to sort of simplify that this week. And so, like I say, remove yourself from email lists that don't work, and just try and simplify your online or your digital space. And so for me, that really looks like turning off the notifications, only answering messages when I have the capacity, not immediately. And, things like WhatsApp, I have it turned on so people can see when I read it, and it's not personal. If I've read it and I haven't responded, I will come back to it, but I just don't have the capacity right now. And I find that a lot, actually. I find a lot that I'll be like, I'll read a message on Instagram and I know that it's said, like, I'm too nosy to just leave on unread until I'm ready for it. That's, I just need to know. But also I then realise, I don't have the capacity to answer that, and I mark it as unread, so I know that I need to go back to it. But yeah, it's just about having the capacity, and it's okay to admit that sometimes we don't. Which also moves nicely onto setting boundaries and not overcommitting ourselves. We can so often just agree to do something because we feel obligated to, but when we start to set gentle boundaries and say no, it can really help protect our peace. So, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And it is completely okay to leave space in your calendar just to breathe. And it is okay to set a boundary. I find this actually very much in my day-to-day. Because we home educate the kids, we have like classes and workshops, and, getting together with our other home ed friends, or in school holidays, getting together with our school educated friends. And I am very, very strict that I have one day a week at home, and I ring fence that, and sometimes that doesn't always go down well, but I'm like, no, we have to have time to breathe. We have to have time to just rest and just have some space, and so that's really important for all of us in all of our calendars, because we're all busy. And so another thing we can do to clear that mental clutter is to let go of being perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as perfect. No such thing as perfectionism. Do it and let it just be good enough. That's how I live. That's what I live my life by. I can't be perfect, but if it's good enough, then that's good enough. And so, I have always, been erred on the side of perfection, and particularly in my work as well. It has to be most perfectly written thing, no mistakes. It has to be, edited, just how I like it. When I'm taking photos, I want the exact right photo. I want it to look a certain way. I'm fussy about it. And I have to remind myself that actually getting something done and getting it out into the world is better than it being perfect. So, and that applies across everything. It's not just like a work related thing. Done is better than perfect. Absolutely. So before I end today's episode, I just wanted to sort of share a few more things that I think are important when we are having a spring clean of our lives aside from the physical. And so I think spring is a perfect chance to sort of reset our daily rhythms and just assess what our current habits are, what feels nourishing to us, what is draining us. Do you have a morning routine that just stresses you out? And when I say morning routine, I don't mean like a 10-step, like get up, sit in silence like a monk for 30 minutes, meditate, do your gratitude journal, drink some lemon water, have a cold plunge. I don't mean anything like that. I tell you what my morning routine is. I get up when the kids wake up, because I do not buy into this whole idea of I have to get up like 3 hours before my kids and get stuff done. No, sleep is the most important thing I will do in a day, and so I will take as much of it as I can get. So I will sleep until my kids wake me up, and then as long as the weather is not extreme, I will get up, get myself ready, go downstairs, and I will go and stand in the morning daylight, sunlight if it's accessible, on my balcony with a cup of coffee for a couple of minutes. And sometimes that is all I get. Sometimes I get longer, sometimes I do not. Just a few moments. And so that's what I mean when I mean a morning routine. I don't mean some sort of 10-step program you need to do, because most of us are busy in the mornings and it just doesn't work for most of us. But it's also one of those things that kind of evolves with the seasons as well. So it looks different. In winter, I tend not to do the going outside part in the morning. As much as I know that it's good for me, I don't always get to it, because do you know what? I'm cold in the winter and I'm hibernating and I don't necessarily feel like it. But for the rest of the year, I definitely take full advantage of that. So I don't feel so bad not doing it in the winter. And it's just the same as things like that very much shows like seasonal living, because I'm an outdoors person, right? I like being outdoors. I spend a lot of time outdoors. But actually, I'm okay with not spending a lot of time outdoors in the winter. I certainly am not going to force it. I am in my down season. I will see you in the spring. So another thing as well, is just simplifying those daily rhythms. So, you can swap out a draining task for a more restful one. You can build in some space between your commitments and just prioritize rest. I know you're probably thinking, I just don't have time for it. I don't know where to prioritize it. Like we always hear about prioritizing self-care, and I think we're like, sure. How? Where do you expect me to find that? But it's just this reminder in terms of when I say prioritizing rest, it's the reminder that you don't have to earn it. It is not a reward for being productive. And actually rest is the fuel that makes everything else sustainable. So, a couple of minutes ago, I said I will not get up before my kids. I will not buy into any of that, that sleep is the most important thing. This is it. My sleep and my rest, it's not a reward. It is necessary, and it is the fuel that makes everything else sustainable, because boy, do we know it when mama hasn't had her sleep. I'll tell you that one. So spring is this perfect time, and before we go, I just want to just remind you that you can sort of gently reassess what you're holding on to. So, just be reflective and think about a few things that no longer fits. what sort of things do you think in your life no longer serves you? What could you let go of? Is it old expectations or comparisons or habits that don't work for you? Is it bigger than that? Is it something bigger that you need to let go of? And so there are things, just some ideas that you might want to think about. Do you have some outdated goals that just don't align with your current values anymore? Or do you have habits that you've formed in maybe a season of survival that no longer serve you? Or do you have any relationships or commitments maybe that just feel heavy rather than nourishing? And the releasing of these doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be so gentle. You can just release these things simply by loosening your grip. You don't have to slam the door. You can just quietly step away from them. So just have a think about what you might be able to let go of and how you might be able to restructure. Just think what serves you and what doesn't. And so before I go, I just wanted to leave you with something to think about. You could write this down. You can just think on it. You can journal it if you're a journal kind of person. So it's just this. What am I holding on to that feels heavy? And what would it feel like if I was to just put it down? So that's what am I holding on to that feels heavy? And what would it feel like if I just put it down? And let yourself be really honest and just think on it, write, journal. The answer might surprise you. But be honest about it, whatever the answer that comes into your mind is. And so if you want to share your reflections, of course, come over to Substack. Although it didn't drop in your inbox this morning, it's still there, just not there to bother you. And so you can find me on Substack, theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. So if you want to share your reflections on that thought or anything on today's episode, come over there, leave a comment. I would love to chat with you. So that's where I'm going to leave this episode. I hope this was helpful in making you think about moving forward this spring and how you want to live. Remember, if you want to grab Rooted in Seasons for 60% off, drop me that email, hello@theslowlivingcollective.com, and just let me know that you listened to the episode and you want to claim the 60% discount. And so that's it for today. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you all so much. If you want to follow me over on Substack, you can find me there, theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. Come over to Instagram. I hang out there and just have fun, really. And so you can find me there at The Slow Living Collective. So thank you guys again so much for listening, and I will catch you in my next episode.